what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, March 23rd. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. And I'm still getting everything set up here. It's been kind of a wild and crazy morning here. For those of you who are reading the website, about 2 in the morning, our neighbor rang our doorbell and said somebody just stole your car. The good news is we just got a phone call a little while ago, and the car is back in our possession. Some damage to the door and ignition locks. Otherwise, they took a few things from inside. And for some reason, they left the trunk filled with plastic bags of recycled bottles and cans. I can't even begin to figure out what that's supposed to be about. But it looks like if it was headed for a chop shop, they just realized it just wasn't worth it with all the problems that the car has. So we've got it back. Green Guy is back. And thanks to everybody who shared their concerns over this somewhat traumatic event here. All right, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Still seeing the aftermath of the London terror attack. They finally come out with the name of the attacker, Khalid Masood. And, of course, everybody's out there saying this is an attack on democracy. And I don't know, maybe Khalid is just very unhappy with the fact that Great Britain is helping the United States bomb all these brown people all over the world. They're really hitting the fact that this gentleman was born in Great Britain. And they're out there saying, see, the open borders aren't the problem. The open borders aren't the problem. Well, obviously there is a problem of some kind, or this sort of thing wouldn't be happening. Paul Joseph Watson is out there on Twitter pointing out how every time there's an Islamist terror attack, the left, the liberals, are out there saying, how can we be nicer to the Islamics so they don't kill us? And obviously that's not going to work very well, hasn't worked very well. But I think the time has come, and I'm not the only person saying this, over on Blacklisted News. It's time to admit the war on terror, as it is presently constituted, does not work. Okay? Now, of course, I have my favorite recommendation for how to stop terrorism, and that's to stop messing around with other people's countries. Of course, that's excluding the terrorism that is committed and framed on a third party to justify a war, invasion, and so forth and so on, and that's basically nation states and intelligence agencies. But really, have you noticed how ever since the United States embarked on this series of wars of conquest across the world, that all of this terrorism has increased, along with our crotches being grabbed by TSA, which obviously isn't working. And the fact that this terrorist was born in Great Britain shows that all these border controls aren't going to work. And it's kind of weird because we're in a world right now where the citizens of a country like the United States of America get their crotches groped and their luggage looted going on any kind of transportation, but the refugees just pour across the border unimpeded. I've never seen a TSA agent down there checking out the illegal immigrants coming across the border. Have you? So the war on terror is a complete and utter failure. All this surveillance on us is a complete and utter failure. All of this dictatorship and tyranny is a complete and utter failure. It is not working. Now, interestingly enough, over on Investment Watch blog, they have an article asking if Turkish President Erdogan is working directly with ISIS to bring terror into Europe. Remember, it was only a couple of days ago that Erdogan said the European people are going to be afraid to walk in their streets if you don't do what we say to do. And the timing is a little bit too cute. ISIS is claiming responsibility for the attack in London. They're not saying they did it, merely that they were obviously inspirational to this Khalid Masood doing what he did. Now, obviously, if you look at the tactical situation, this was never going to be a successful attack on Parliament. So it was some kind of symbolism. It was some kind of possibly to make the members of Parliament themselves feel vulnerable and afraid ahead of potential votes on more British participation in the U.S. wars of conquest. So, getting on down to this, the Czech president has come on out and said that Erdogan's statements about you must have 5 babies, the future of Europe is Turkish, and the Europeans will be afraid to walk in the streets, is saying that Turkey is really not a good fit for the European Union, because the member states of the European Union are supposed to be very friendly and tolerant of each other, and obviously Turkey is not. Erdogan, I think, people talk about crazy foreign leaders like Kim Jong-un. I think Erdogan is at the top of the list for a straitjacket at this point. He's definitely a loose cannon on there. A lot of people saying, is it a coincidence that we had this terror attack in London the same time all this new leaks about surveillance broke out? It certainly gave the corporate media an excuse not to be covering these other stories. And very often that will be the excuse for some kind of a terror attack or an event to distract the media. Remember following the Beirut bombing, all those Marines were killed. 24 hours later, the U.S. invades Grenada to change the focus and change the story. We're going to do a quick shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. There's apparently been another, thankfully, thwarted attack of some kind in Antwerp, Belgium. And this is a French national of North African origin, has been arrested in Antwerp. Apparently attempted to drive into a crowd. And I don't think they took my Honda over to Belgium and then sent it back in that short an interval of time. But somebody's out there pushing that terror meme again. Ramp up to a new false flag, your daily dose of booga booga. Now let's get on to Obamagate. Let's get on to the nonsense about Russia. They're still out there pushing it as hard as they can. And a lot of people are noticing that Comey really does seem to be working against Trump because he's stonewalling the Congress on key surveillance details. And basically, House Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes is saying that the FBI is not cooperating with his investigation into the wiretapping claims. They are obstructing. Same way they were doing with Hillary's email server. Now, Comey is in a little bit of public relations difficulty. He's not actually running for office, so it's not that big a deal. But according to the latest polls, only 1 in 6 Americans have a favorable view of FBI Director Comey. And I'm sure Comey's going to come back and say, well, Putin obviously rigged that poll. Americans love me. But you know, when J. Edgar Hoover was in charge of the FBI, most Americans absolutely loathed him. So did most politicians. He was blackmailing them all with his secret private files. It looks like Comey's just another one of the same type, as it were. Now then, let's get on back up to New York and Anthony Weiner and his Weiner pictures and his laptop. Remember back when Comey was forced to reopen the investigation into Hillary's emails, when it was found that Anthony Weiner's laptop was found to contain State Department emails, some of which had not been turned over as required. And there was a little bit of headbutting going on where the FBI in New York and the New York Police Department said, we can, you know, if you don't take this, we're going to have our own investigation, we're going to go public, and we're going to release everything we have. And that was basically what forced Comey to say, we're having to reopen the investigation, trust us, there's nothing there. And of course, Comey has come under intense fire from Hillary's supporters for announcing that, but he really didn't have much of a choice, because if he hadn't announced it and shown he was in control of the FBI, the New York FBI office and the NYPD were going to start leaking. Well, apparently the New York FBI, certain agents in there, and the New York Police Department are basically fed up with James Comey, having done absolutely nothing with all the information they found on the laptop, and now we're getting word they're starting to leak some of that information out. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's time for some total transparency into the lifestyles of the rich and political that rule our country here. Now, there are new whistleblowers coming forward. One of them is via Larry Klayman and Freedom Watch. And basically, they revealed yet another system, codenamed the Hammer. And this was Brennan's and Clapper's secret computer system that is a parallel to the NSA system that watches everybody, everywhere, all the time. Massive supercomputer system apparently located at Fort Washington, Maryland, and apparently just sweeping up everything. Now, this new whistleblower, they're calling him the Super Snowden. He's already released 600 million pages of illegal NSA spying information. And we've had another whistleblower, Dennis Montgomery, who's the one who's talking to Larry Klayman, has come on out and said that like Edward Snowden, when he found these illegal abuses were taking place, he tried to complain through the proper channels of communication within the agency, and they wouldn't even give him the time of day. They didn't want to hear it. They didn't want to do anything about it. And like Edward Snowden, it reached a point where they said, if I can't fix this going through the system, it's time to go outside the system. And apparently one of the things Montgomery has revealed is that the FBI had proof that there was surveillance on the Donald Trump on Donald Trump 2 years ago and did nothing. Covered it up, sat on it. So this thing is coming out bit by bit. It's coming out a little more rapidly than Watergate because of the internet and the independent media. Remember, back when the Watergate burglary happened, it was over 2 years until the case built to the point where Richard Nixon was forced to resign. So it's going to take a little while for the current Watergate. I don't think it's going to take 2 years. Maybe by summer, it's going to really start coming apart. Now, we are seeing more and more of these McCarthy-era tactics being used by the defenders of the status quo, the establishment, the deep state, whatever. And Adam Schiff, who's the top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, is now out there questioning if Nunes is actually acting as a surrogate of the White House. My first response to that is, whose surrogate are you, Mr. Schiff? Because remember, Adam Schiff, when those House Intelligence hearings opened up on Russia, Schiff issued a statement that made it sound like this was already proven, it was a done deal, it was beyond question that Donald Trump and Russia were working together, that Russia had hacked the elections. And for anybody who basically turned off the hearings at that point, they would have come away saying, okay, it's a done deal, Russia and Trump, and Russia was hacking the election. But of course, if you'd stayed and listened to the entire hearing, what you would have heard was, well, there's no proof, we've been investigating, we can't find any evidence whatsoever, but we deduce that Russia tampered with the election because it just makes common sense. The American people were just in love with Hillary Clinton. There's no way she could have lost an honest election. Therefore, by default, it had to be Russia's fault. That's their thinking on that one here. So, and again, this is right out of the McCarthy era, where anybody who questioned the Red Scare, the commie witch hunts, was denounced as a commie themselves. And that's a tactic that goes back to the original witch hunts. If you dared stand up and say, look, you're torturing innocent women, and occasionally men, to death over these fairy tales about black cats and broomsticks, you would be accused of being a witch and be thrown right into prison with them. Another modern witch hunt, of course, is the preserving the Holocaust, where lawyers who defend people who are charged under these laws, making it a crime to question the orthodox account of the Holocaust, the lawyers are charged. And it's all about creating a climate of fear to keep you from speaking out, even in a nation which, at least ostensibly, has a right to freedom of speech. So they're not going to let go of this Russian interference thing. Even though the hearings were an absolute fizzle, John McCain is now out there calling for a select committee on the Russian interference. They're just going to keep pounding on this thing, Russian interference, Russian interference. No, we don't have any evidence, but just we just in our heart of hearts. Miss Cleo called up and told us that Putin was interfering in our elections. We saw it on the Ouija board, in the tea leaves. Uri Geller phoned up and said, in between bending his spoons, that Russia was tampering with our election. And of course, the hypocrisy is stunning when you realize the U.S. government has tampered with 81 elections in other countries since the end of World War II. But apparently what the establishment is trying to do is convince the American people that Donald Trump is really working with Vladimir Putin, or even just that he might be, and just using the precautionary principle, we should 25th Amendment him out of the Oval Office, put in Mike Pence, just to be sure, just in case it might be true. And of course, that goes against one of the key founding principles of this nation, that you not be punished for something until there is proof that you've committed a crime beyond a reasonable doubt. The people who are attacking the President of the United States right now are basically returning to Code Napoleon. You are guilty until you can prove that you're innocent. And that's exactly the attitude that they're taking. It's certainly the attitude that Schiff displayed in the opening statement on that the House Intelligence Committee hearing. We assume it's correct. We dare you to prove that we're wrong. Now, Chaffetz has just found out that the FBI has been playing fast and loose with the FISA court. We know that the FISA warrant that was issued to allow legalized spying on Trump's campaign was based on a fraud. Somebody set up a bogus Donald Trump website to try and make it look like he was communicating with Russia. Somebody planted software on the Trump servers, malware, to fake communications with Russia. That's been found by the Department of Justice. But according to Chaffetz, he is saying that they have evidence that the FBI has misled the FISA court in at least 75 cases, going on in with fraudulent evidence, outright lies, to get those warrants. The FBI is not the swell bunch of Joes that you see on radio or the TV shows and movies. The FBI, going all the way back to J. Edgar Hoover, has gone out of its way to make sure that any TV shows and movies about the FBI show them as a wonderful bunch of guys, and they're not. Just like the CIA are not those swell guys you read about in the Tom Clancy novels or see in those movies based on the same. They're not. They're basically organized crime-style thugs wrapped in the American flag. Now, Larry Klayman is out there saying that there is no question that Comey lied about the Trump surveillance. The evidence is out with the new whistleblowers, and he's saying Comey should be hauled back to testify before the committee again, and he should be put on the defensive. So all of this is having a tremendous pushback, if you will, on the Democrats. And rather alarmingly, they have a new Harvard-Harris poll among Democratic voters, and 40% of the respondents came back and said there's no leader of the Democratic Party. It's just a bunch of people screaming at each other, trying to get what they want, and there's virtually no leadership left in the Democratic National Committee. And that may have certainly been true last year, where it was just a bunch of Hillary hacks trying to steal the nomination away from Bernie Sanders. Okay, getting on to the corporate media, over at the Duran.com, interesting little article. The fake news media, meaning the corporate media, is running out of ways to blame Russia. Russia did this, Russia did that, Russia is stealing socks from your dryer, Russia is hiding the keys to your car under the sofa cushions, whatever else they can come up with. And they're already realizing it's failing. It's failing miserably, and now they're trying to sort of pull back and cut their losses by saying, don't get your hopes up too high, you know, and if you're disappointed, it's your fault. The same thing that Rachel Maddow did when her tax return faceplant happened. We'll be right back. Aloha America, welcome back to the show here, and we were talking about how this Russia hacked the elections, Russia took the last cookie out of the cookie jar, and all this other nonsense is not getting any traction with the American people. And so now they're trying to pull back on this and say, well, we reported on some things we heard. There doesn't seem to be anything there, and don't get your hopes up. And so they're basically trying to cushion the landing when this latest piece of propaganda comes crashing back to earth. And they're going to come out and they're going to say, for everybody who's out there saying, where's the payoff? We were supporting you in this whole Russia thing and nothing's happened. And so they're coming out and say, well, your expectations were too high. Really, it's your fault. And remember, that's how Rachel Maddow tried to evade that disaster she created for herself with the Trump tax returns. She got on Twitter and said, well, you guys were just expecting too much, ignoring the fact that Rachel and MSNBC had just been pounding on this thing all day long. We got them. We've got Donald Trump's library card. We've got the receipt from his hamburger last week, whatever it is that they've got. So they're already trying to pull back on that because it's not getting traction. The American people simply are not believing what politicians and the corporate media says anymore. Now, CNN came on out. Again, anything to tarnish Donald Trump there, and they're out there saying Trump ran for president just to enrich himself. Actually, Donald Trump has dropped 220 spots on the Forbes billionaires list. Donald Trump may be the first president in U.S. history that has gotten poorer by winning the White House instead of richer. Look how much money the Obamas and the Clintons came out of. Huge amounts of money. And what did they do for it? They talked. They sold things that weren't really theirs here. Now, speaking of Rachel Maddow, she went on The View today to say that she is the victim of a dirty trick by Donald Trump, that he leaked his own 2005 tax return just to embarrass her. And talk about desperation on the cusp of madness here, because if Rachel or anybody in her MSNBC production team had actually looked at the tax return, they would have realized there wasn't anything there on which to build a story. The entire story was, we succeeded in getting his tax return. And it proved that he paid a huge amount of taxes. And so Rachel is out there acting just like a liberal. It's somebody else's fault. I'm okay. The viewers had too high expectations. Donald Trump has played a prank on me. It's not my fault. It's amazing. All right, let's take some phone calls. Dallas in Austin. Boy, there's a weird confluence of names. What's on your mind?
So I don't know if you talked about it, Mike, but I heard you got your car back.
Yeah, I did. We were a little less than an hour away from airtime, and all of a sudden I got a call from HPD, and they said, we think we found your car. So we hopped in the cab and we went on over, and we're just delighted to have it back because we really were not in a position to have to go get some kind of replacement transportation at this particular time. Obviously, our insurance company is delighted. Like I said, the only real damage is to the driver's side lock and the ignition switch. They did take a few things out of the car, but not everything. The only weird aspect of this is the trunk of the car is now filled with bags of recycled bottles and cans. And I'm still trying to figure out what that means, but it does seem like it was just some kids who were out partying and they went joyriding, and hopefully this will be the end of it. We're going to get the car repaired. We're going to go ahead and get an alarm on it. Yes, the car is back and we're delighted.
I actually have a theorem about that.
Yeah.
I used to live in Hawaii when I was young.
Yeah.
We lived on Diamond Head Golf Course, and it was awesome and beautiful.
I know it
but
well.
I think some poor individual with no money stole your car to drive around Hawaii, pick up recyclable goods, turn them in so he could make money.
Could very well be, and then they went...
And I'll let you go with that.
All right, well, thanks an awful lot. It's certainly possible on that. We got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take a few more phone calls. We're going to start with Chris in Michigan. Chris, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing much better than I was a couple hours ago.
Congratulations on getting your car back.
Yes, thank you.
And a view of all people, I can't believe you haven't figured out who stole it by now.
Well, please enlighten me.
The Russians.
Oh, of course. Had to be. Absolutely. Vladimir Putin came on over and carjacked my car. Problem solved. Let me call the HPD and tell them I've got a suspect here. I've got the phone number right here to call in with an updated complaint.
All right. Well, on another subject.
Yes?
I keep hearing this echo chamber of, back to 9/11 again, Palestinians dancing on 9/11 and not Israelis. I wonder if you can enlighten us on how maybe that Palestinian dancing was debunked.
Well, it turned out the footage that was being shown was outdated. It was actually video of a food distribution program to the Palestinians, which of course is going to make them very happy, and they're going to be celebrating. And it was simply put out by the corporate media, and they said, these are Palestinians celebrating on 9/11. You will believe what we tell you. Back then, a lot of people did. These days, nobody's buying it anymore. We're seeing more and more cases like the one that came out just the other day where they were trying to do a documentary on the alcohol-ravaged Aborigines, and it turned out the footage that was captioned or labeled as a wild alcohol spree turned out to be a wake. And so the corporate media loves to do this. They're in the business of manufacturing the news, not reporting it.
Speaking of which, how about that Site Intelligence, the first one to come out with reports about the bombing?
Well, Site Intelligence is run by a lady named Rita Katz. Her father was executed as an Israeli spy, and there is no secret that Site Intelligence is definitely pro-Israel. They're always out there claiming that terror attacks are coming from these terrorist websites, but they'll never tell you where the terrorist websites actually are, so you can check for yourself. There's a lot of organizations whose sole function is to launder the propaganda by making it look like it's coming from a quasi-independent source. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights in Great Britain is another good example of that. Anything by Pamela Geller. It's big business out there. I mean, in a struggling economy, the one growth area that we have in our economy is public relations, which is a fancy name for being paid to lie to people.
And then the corporate media just picks up the Site Intelligence news and runs with it like it's gospel.
That's exactly
well,
right.
Have a great day, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go and switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Hey, did they add a GPS satellite system to your car? I just wonder.
No, I have a GPS on my cell phone. But if I actually use it, it's a $300 ticket here in Hawaii.
Yeah, because, you know, you're probably under surveillance. So I wouldn't put it past them.
That's a given. That's a given that, you know, I'm under surveillance. And they're not going to find anything. In fact, Claire likes to joke that surveilling she and I is probably punishment duty for the CIA, NSA, FBI. Oh, you messed up. You're going to have to watch the Riveros for a while.
Hey, Mike, I don't watch the news at all. I go on YouTube. I'll flip through, like, what they say just to get an idea of, you know, what's going on. And I don't know if you see what Tucker Carlson had somebody on named Zeke Cohen. I think he's like a city council in Baltimore. Used to be a school teacher, Democrat, you know, obviously liberal. But he said, like, basically they went from 1 million population in Baltimore to 600,000, and that's why basically he said, you know, we need those immigrants coming in. But doesn't he realize that, you know, none of them are going to speak English, and it's just going to wound up being no-go zones all in Baltimore?
Yeah, we're seeing these no-go zones start to crop up in America just like they're cropping up over in Europe. And again, it's part of that New World Order of dropping the borders and breaking up contiguous areas and sort of trying to erase our cultural, regional, historical identity to make us easier to control. But people are pushing back. People are digging their heels in. And I think right now the globalists are in serious, serious trouble because they don't have the resources to simply stand up and say, we're the one world government, obey us or we will do bad things to you, because they don't have enough personnel to come on out and rule us by direct force. The only way they can rule us is with our own permission, by lying to us and saying it's for your own good, or whatever other nonsense they're going to come with. You know, we need to rule you to stop human-caused global warming. We need to rule you to make sure that you have your vaccines, and so forth and so on. But people are really beginning to say, no, I want to be left alone is what I want.
And switching gears real quick, Mike, I remember reading when we talk, you talk about the economic troubles obviously we got, because remember in Zero Hedge had Macy's and Sears. Well, rip Sears this year, because I don't think they're going to make it through the whole year.
Okay.
They're gone.
Yeah.
They put a hold on their, they basically stopped getting shipments of, I guess, items, and the insurance companies are bailing on them, so.
Yeah, it's getting kind of sticky out there on a lot of different fronts right now.
And all right, thanks, Mike.
All right, we're going to let you go here and switch over to Alex in Florida. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I guess that the powers that be just want us to swallow the fact that they get to put surveillance on our candidate, and it's too bad. Is that what it is?
No, I think what it is that the fact that we're not a democracy anymore is being brought into the light. The fact that we do live in a government that seems to be using George Orwell's 1984 as an instruction manual is being dragged into the public view, and it's actually certainly not what they wanted to have happen. What all of these people were trying to do was sort of recreate the world of the 1950s and 1960s. There's a Cold War, the Russians are our enemies, and we were all scared and obedient and just believed everything that the government and the corporate media told us. Now, they've lost that world. That world is gone. It is not coming back. And that's another reason why they're not getting traction on all this Russia did this and Russia did that, because we, the American people, have been lied to so much, we're coming to understand that we're lied to all the time. We are the most lied to people on the face of the earth. We are victims of government propaganda on such a scale, it would make Goebbels blush.
That's right. And you know what I do not hear much of is that the fact that Hillary Clinton probably had access to all of Trump's campaign communications.
Yes.
All of Bernie Sanders' communications in his campaign.
Yes.
And she still lost. That she still lost.
You know, she did. If you remember that campaign, if you remember the campaign, it's not like she was really campaigning to reach the people. She ran that campaign as if I have to go out and do some rallies and some public speaking to make it look like there's a campaign, but the focus was always on the underhanded stuff. And now we're seeing this story that has come on out saying that the reason nobody was allowed to look at the DNC servers was there was evidence on there that Hillary had hired private security corporations to spy on Donald Trump and to spy on Bernie Sanders, and they've drawn a financial link between this so-called consulting firm CrowdStrike and the head of Google, where Eric Schmidt, we've already seen that Google was trying to get Hillary in there, and Google pumped huge amounts of money into CrowdStrike, and then CrowdStrike turned around and said, oh, it's all the fault of the Russians. But that was the reason that nobody was allowed to look at the DNC server, because there was evidence on there of use of private security companies to conduct espionage. And again, this is just like Watergate all over again.
Do you think there's going to be any prosecutions? I hope that there will be. I mean, this is bigger than Watergate.
I agree, and I'd love to see prosecutions. I would love to see all of this dragged out into the light for Americans to learn from. And in the wake of Watergate, even though Gerald Ford, Warren Commission member, dedicated to keeping the lid on what really happened there in Dallas, Texas, we had a period after Watergate where people were just openly distrusting of the government, and that was a good and healthy thing. It was the same period of time we had the COINTELPRO scandal, when people broke into an FBI office and they found all these files about how the FBI was routinely spying on peace activists, the Native Americans, the early feminists, all of this a violation of law, and it was a big stink, and it brought the federal government to the edge of illegitimacy, and Congress was finally forced to hold hearings about all the terrible things the FBI had been doing. And then the FBI said, well, you caught us, we were bad, and we promise we'll never do it again. Well, obviously they are still doing it again. It's just like the corporate media. They cannot change their business model.
It's so sad. I can't believe that they're willing to go to war with Russia to maintain their power. And that was Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party. That was their main card.
That was what they were pushing. I don't think they wanted a hot war with Russia. They're trying to restart the Cold War, where there's actually no real direct conflict between the U.S. and Russia. There's a little proxy fight in Vietnam or something like that, but we're not really risking open war, but it's just an excuse to soak the American taxpayer for vast sums of money to pour into the military-industrial complex, who then very generously write campaign donations to those politicians who will continue to support the scam.
Hillary Clinton's a bad little girl. I wish she would make some comments on this. She needs to be questioned. She hasn't been questioned at all about the rigging the election and Russia rigging our election. She needs to be questioned. I think she is a criminal for sure, no doubt about it.
No question about it. I mean, James Comey, in that press conference where he said we're not going to prosecute her, it went down the list of the Title 18 felony violations Hillary Clinton committed. She is admittedly a criminal, but she's being protected by the government. We have a two-tier society where the elites can do whatever they want without punishment, and everybody else has to toe the law. It's a parallel to what society was like in medieval Europe, where if you had a title of nobility, the laws did not apply to you anymore. Remember the story about Ursabat Bathory, who was this real-life forerunner of the female vampire, Vampirella, and she was a serial killer of other girls from around the villages that were on her land, and she was beyond punishment because of her title. They literally had to change the laws of the country to say, yes, we do have to punish nobility who go on out and just feel they have a right to kill everybody around them.
Hey, Mike, I want to say one more thing, and then I'm going to go.
Yes.
I sent Trump an email at whitehouse.gov last night,
yes,
basically telling him that if he stays committed to his campaign promises of no war and no regime overthrowing by means of war, he will be a great president. We have enough to fight in our own country. It's a big battle right here at Washington, D.C. We need to close the CIA and the FBI and start over.
We have 17 intelligence agencies in this country. That's 16 too many. And part of the problem is they're all duplicating each other's efforts at huge expense to the taxpayer. They see each other as rivals. They do not cooperate. Now, one of the cover stories that they put out following 9/11 about why this terror attack was not detected and thwarted was, a failure of communication between this agency and that agency. Now, that's just propaganda, but it is a real fact of life that these intelligence agencies see themselves as in competition with each other for a greater share of the intelligence budget, for a greater access to certain resources, and there are way, way too many. And as a result, the more money they spend, the less effective they actually become.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to go ahead and send Trump an email and let him know that we're behind him all the way, and he will be a great president if he can just put our military to the side and let's fix what's going on in our own home. I mean, that's important. And I also believe that if the election was real, I mean, Hillary Clinton had the access to her competitors' communications. If it was real, it would have been about a 5 million vote difference.
Probably even more than that. I don't think we're ever going to be able to determine the scale of the election fraud that we saw last year, because our current election system is designed deliberately to facilitate election fraud and to conceal it. And we really don't know. It's like all these states that were allowing illegal immigrants to vote, they're busy trying to cover it up because they know they committed a crime by doing so. I really think that Donald Trump had an absolute landslide during the election, and even with all the rigging and the illegals and everything, you know, it still wasn't enough. That's the thing about vote fraud you need to keep in mind. Election fraud can swing a race a few percentage points back and forth, and nobody will question the sudden come-from-behind victory. But you can't use election fraud to reverse a landslide, or everybody knows what happened. And I think when it came right down to the election night, people were looking at the real numbers coming on in and saying, we can't do this. We can't hand this to Hillary, or the entire nation is going to realize this was a crooked election.
Yeah, I actually think that the Hillary campaign knew they were going to lose a few days before the election. That's why they canceled the glass ceiling celebration that they were going to have the day after the election. I think they actually knew.
Well, I think some of the people inside Hillary's campaign suspected they were going to lose. Hillary herself was still convinced she was going to win. She didn't even have a concession speech prepared. And normally when you are running for an office, you will have two speeches ready to go, a victory speech and a concession speech. Hillary had a victory speech, never wrote a concession speech. That's why she had to wait 24 hours to concede. And yeah, Hillary was convinced it was hers. And yeah, she tried to beat up John Podesta. She had to be physically restrained from beating him up.
Yeah, and her twin brother, John McCain, is a pathetic wreck. But I have to go, Mike, and I thank you for your time, and keep up the great work, okay?
Thank you. I will do so for just as long as I possibly can. And let's see, I need to do one more thing here, and I'm multitasking right now. Okay, so the phone lines are open right now, and we are hearing that Democrats are going to filibuster Gorsuch's nomination to the Supreme Court. More about that when we come back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And getting on back to the news here. So we're talking about how Democrats have announced they're going to filibuster Gorsuch's nomination vote. Now, if they do that, the GOP would need 60 votes to break the filibuster, and if everybody is voting along straight party lines, that's not going to happen. Now, as Ted Cruz pointed out the other day, back when Gorsuch was up for a federal judgeship, not a single Democrat voted against him. So this has nothing to do with Gorsuch and everything to do with the Democrats trying to obstruct President Trump any way that they can. And more, it's looking like that entire U.S. Congress building, the Capitol building, is just a giant, very expensive, very well-furnished daycare center for children. Because that's how they're acting right now. It really is amazing. All right, now then, other corruption going on. It's not just Washington, D.C. Over in Philadelphia, their district attorney, Seth Williams, has been indicted on a wide-ranging corruption case, 23 counts, charging this two-term Democrat, and apparently he was soliciting bribes from deep-pocketed donors seeking his help evading certain legal problems. I think one of the worst mistakes the United States Supreme Court ever did was to take away the idea of citizens being able to file criminal charges against people, because that gave the prosecutors and the U.S. attorneys way too much power. They get to decide who is charged and hauled into court or not. And as this case illustrates, it's just another vector for the ultra-rich to get away with their crimes. commit a crime, make a huge donation to the district attorney, and the case just goes away. I remember many years ago, we were still living on the other side of the island, and I was undergoing cyber attacks on my server and my home computer. And I went through channels. I filed a police report, and it went to the FBI Cybercrimes Division. And the FBI agent who was on the case, and no, I am not going to provide their name, told me off the record the U.S. attorney, even back then, had sent down an order. Hacker attacks against activists, truth activists, websites were not to be investigated. Now, over in Israel, apparently 13 people have been arrested in another corruption scandal involving Israel Aerospace Industries, including a former senior IDF officer. And the charges include fraud, money laundering, breach of trust, and it's apparently a really huge scandal because Israel tends to turn a blind eye to the little crimes, but above a certain level, they have to act. We're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, do you remember a short while ago there were all these bomb threats being called into Jewish community centers and synagogues and all that stuff? It was all over the world, here in the United States of America, Europe, Australia, New Zealand. They finally tracked down and arrested the person who was making the calls. He's an 18-year-old U.S. Israeli citizen arrested in Israel. It was another hate crime hoax. Oh, we're the victims. We're the victims. Feel sorry for us. We're getting bomb threats. It's amazing. All right, let's grab some phone calls. James in Tokyo. Hajime Mashite, what's on your mind today?
Hajime Mashite, Michael-san. Stop complaining about the NSA probably researching you, because it's all your fault, because you get on the air and you're wearing this T-shirt with Putin on a pony. What do you expect? So if you're dumb enough to buy a shirt, or if one of your listeners is an idiot who sends you something like that, I mean, how could you complain?
I'm sure the NSA was listening to me a long time before I got that shirt. And by the way, it's a very well-made shirt. You know, compared to T-shirts you buy in the American stores, it's very well made. Good solid fabric, good fabrication. Actually, Claire tends to steal it from me all the time now.
Well, it sure is, and maybe I got next time I go back, I'll get one for the lovely harp-playing angel.
Thank you very much. She will appreciate that, and I'll let her know it's on its way.
Hey, about Trump, you know, the thing that interests me about the surveillance about him was a lot of it was after he was elected and not before.
Well,
so
now, wait a minute. We're not sure. We're not sure. We have evidence that he was being surveilled. He was being surveilled after he was elected. That does not rule out him being surveilled before the election, especially by these private security companies, which appear to be linked to the Hillary Clinton campaign. And so I would say that the surveillance after he was elected was already trying to find ways to derail his administration, to get their people into his cabinet, to find anything that they could control him with. Even so, I mean, surveilling, a presidential president-elect. I mean, that's dirty pool right there. Obviously, they're not spying on him for the benefit of the Trump administration or the American people of the United States. We know that as soon as Trump won that election, there was this huge ongoing effort to find some way to get him out, and this surveillance was obviously part of it, because they keep on going back and saying, well, we're trying to prove that Trump is connected to Russia. Did you find any evidence? No, we didn't, but we're just convinced. The tarot cards told us. Yeah.
It was probably going on from before.
Yes.
But since it was going on after, I agree with your one point. Yeah, they're just trying to find something dirty, you know, try and get him impeached somehow. But what do you think about a different aspect? What do you think if the reason why they still keep doing it is that they're trying to protect themselves against illegal actions that have occurred in the past administration?
Of course they are. Of course they are. I mean, our political reality has been dominated going all the way back to the mid-1980s by the CIA gun and drug running operation out of Arkansas. And the Bush political fortunes, and to a greater extent the Clinton political fortunes, all spring out of that. And their goal was to have this narcocracy in charge of the United States of America, and they were going to pass the White House back and forth from Bush to Clinton to Clinton to Bush to Bush to Clinton. And they allowed Obama in because he was perfectly okay with what was really going on. But they know that Donald Trump, if Donald Trump gets a chance to take a deep breath and start looking at what the CIA and the Bushes and Clintons have actually been doing, yeah, he's going to come down, he's going to put them in jail. And that's why they're so afraid of him. And they're already trying to figure out a way that they're going to, grab control of this country back again. Apparently, Chelsea Clinton is receiving a Lifetime Impact Award from Variety magazine for her humanitarian work. In other words, they're already starting to put all kinds of gold plaques and medals around her to make you think that she's a really good person ahead of her potential run for the Congress, followed by a run for the White House.
Well, they should also give Bill Clinton a gold medal for building 100 huts in Haiti and stealing $3 billion. But, yeah, I agree with your assessment of I think it's just people trying to protect themselves.
That's exactly what it is.
More, and I agree with you. And, yeah, I'm going to go, and, yeah, you have a great... Mike, you got to shave that beard off because a lot of the buttercups, you might increase your audience, and especially if you keep the bushy mustache.
I'm not interested
Love you,
in...
Mike.
Thank you very much. Dotashmashe. Buttercups, I'm not really interested in catering to them. I've thought about shaving the beard off. Claire says she likes it, and it's sort of the brand, it's sort of the image I've had over the years. And if I were to shave it off, people would tune into the show and say, oh, that's not Michael anymore, and they'd turn the show off, I think. All right, we're going to go to Brendan in San Francisco.
I like the brand, and I like Claire.
Well, I love Claire, absolutely. Best thing in my life. James, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Brendan in San Francisco. Brendan, what's on your mind?
Mike, we should keep track. We should have a counter of all the false anti-Jewish attacks and anti-Black Lives Matter attacks. We should have a ticker going for that.
I'd have to dedicate an entire computer for that. Be counting up so fast. Huh. I'm going to need a supercomputer for that.
Hey, Mike, I called in because I gotta say, if you could get Steve Pieczenik on your show, he might actually be able to complete a thought without being interrupted, misdirected. I've just watched the third hour of the Alex Jones show, and Pieczenik's one of the reasons I watched that show is to get some insight and some insider scoop. And every time the conversation strays away from what Jones is trying to accomplish, he just will interrupt, redirect, distract. He even goes as far as making jokes about Bolton's mustache, and it's the most frustrating thing to watch. I mean, is there any chance of getting him on your show?
I'll make the effort, I'll make the outreach and try and get him on there. And, it's kind of interesting. I got several emails from people who were pointing out the exact same thing. And what's really interesting? You know how Harvard University came out with that list of fake news websites, and WhatReallyHappened.com is on there, Paul Craig Roberts is on there. They pointed out that amazingly, none of Alex Jones' websites or shows are on that Harvard list of fake news. And that raises really kind of an interesting question mark. But years ago, when I was an occasional guest on Alex Jones' show, he did exactly the same thing to me. Whenever we got anywhere near what Israel was doing, he'd be cutting me off, and I'd get all these emails saying that after I was off the air, that he would basically be trying to reverse it and say Israel's good and Palestine is bad, and anybody who questions Israel is mentally retarded, which was the straw that broke my camel's back, so to speak, on that. But on the other hand, I still have to remember it was Alex Jones who got me into talk radio 10 years ago. And I can't forget that, and I can't remember that I do owe him a debt for that as well. So I think at this point, here's what I'd like to say, okay? The independent media is not big enough yet where we should be going after each other. Certainly the corporate media would like us to do that. The politicians would like us to do that. Israel would like us to do that.
Right.
And so I think if we can't bring ourselves to uniting and cooperating with each other, let us at least tolerate each other with dignity.
Right, I agree. My point simply is that if, you know, Mike, in the course of a day, right, the average person has maybe 2 or 3 hours to try to catch up on the day's events. And it's like, why waste time? That's one of the reasons I think What Really Happened is so popular, because you are so clear and concise. You boil it down, not trying to, you know, do your ego. But, man, if I have an hour to try to catch up, I'm going to tune to you. But when I see Pachenik's on, I got to give that guy the due respect, and it's when I see the host undermining it, it's just very frustrating. I think he would be such a great addition to your show, and he would actually be able to complete a thought. Man, oh man.
I'll make an effort to reach out to him. We do need to have more on-air guests because I'm doing it all here. Sometimes I just don't have the time to do the outreach, but I'll make a point of trying to connect with him, and on the assumption it will not damage his already existing relationship with Alex Jones, we'll try and get him on here.
Hey, Mike, real quick, do you remember when Hillary, she revealed that it's a nine-minute response time to a strike from, I don't know, North Korea or whatnot? That was like classified information?
I don't remember,
during the debate.
Oh, yes, I do remember. And what she was actually saying was that it would take 9 minutes from the first detection of a North Korean launch before our missiles would launch in return. And that was something that probably shouldn't have been made public. But you know, Hillary did. Now, whether it actually is considered classified information or not, that might be another Title 18 violation. But again, Hillary is protected. She's, you know, the thing you need to remember about the Clintons and also the Bushes, they know where all the dead bodies are buried in Washington, D.C. They know how they got to be dead bodies, and they're in a position to blackmail just about anybody of any importance anywhere in the government, and for that matter, the corporate media. And that's why they're still protected.
The reason I mention that is because Alex Jones had a caller on, and he brought that up, and it was the first time I ever heard Alex Jones be speechless. He had no response, and then he went on to make a joke about it, and it's the oddest thing. I encourage viewers to go back and try to find that clip, because if one thing, Alex Jones is never he's never at a loss for words, and on that one particular item was very telling. He had nothing to say, and he went on to make a joke about some off-topic thing. So these are where I'm trying to be critical, and I don't want to waste time. But thanks again, Mike, and keep up the good work.
All right, thank you very much for the kind words, and yes, we're going to keep on going for as long as is necessary. We're going to do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network, and then we're going to go back to the phones to Bill in Wisconsin. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, aloha, Mike. I like what Brandon had to say there. I listened to the Pachenik interview with Alex Jones today, and I was late getting to your show. I don't know if you've really covered it, but he brought out some dynamite information about Neil Gorsuch.
Okay.
Did you hear that?
No, I did not.
Okay. And Pachenik mentioned that Gorsuch, of course, has a lot of the establishment education and so forth, and he comes across as very sincere, as a type of judge that is going to follow the Constitution. But you better go back and listen to this interview. Pachenik brought out the fact that when Gorsuch was in the Department of Justice under Alberto Gonzales, that he was the one that implemented a lot of the Patriot Act positions, the torture, all of these policies, that you and I and decent Americans oppose on constitutional grounds, he was the one that was promoting that. And
well,
he was
now,
very concerned about
hang
that.
on. We need to be very careful with our language here, because it sounds to me like you said, Gonzalez was in charge and calling the shots. And we need to be very careful whether Gorsuch, in the position he was in, how much of the decision-making authority did he have? And it sounds to me like not a whole heck of a lot. And like anybody else, he wants.
I'm saying Pachenik is saying that Gorsuch was implicit in that, and that he was involved in that. And Pachenik does not like Gorsuch. You go and listen to that. It's very, very powerful. I know that Gorsuch is listed as a member of the Council on Foreign Relations.
Well, that's definitely a strike against him. But there's another aspect to look at here. Given all the corruption we know has been going on, all the war crimes for the last quarter of a century, I think it's going to be almost impossible to find anybody who doesn't have some dark aspects in their history. I think from the point of view of Donald Trump, the question is going to be, are they going to do what they're told to do right now? Now, in the case of the Supreme Court, obviously the judges are not subordinate to the White House. So I think we need to look at Gorsuch's voting record on various lawsuits and cases that have come before him as a judge. I'm not sure that what he did at the Department of Justice is that important. Obviously, you and I don't agree with it, but it's not like he was up at the top saying, yeah, we're going to do this, and I'm going to order all my subordinates to do it. It sounds to me like at that point in time, he himself was a subordinate. And people who have made a career out of working in the government understand that insubordination is a fast trip to the unemployment line.
Well, I understand that, but I think you ought to take a look at that interview. All
right, I'll take a look at it. If you will email me the URL, I'd appreciate that.
Well, I'm not on the computer. All I do is listen to shows. I get huge bills from my telephone company, and it's incredible. But one other thing, and
yes.
that is, I went back and read what Roger Stone wrote about Jeffrey Epstein and the situation with Acosta. Acosta was the federal attorney trying to put Jeffrey Epstein in jail. And if you're familiar, he had to go for only a certain number of days out of, 13 months. But every day he could leave at 6 a.m. in the morning, come back 10 o'clock at night. It was really a slap on the wrist.
It was symbolic, yeah.
What he had been doing.
I agree.
I was concerned with this Acosta because he was the federal prosecutor and attorney in charge, and according to what Stone writes in his book, the Clinton situation, War on Women, that it was something that was coming from, again, the top on down from Alberto Gonzales.
Well, again, I think anybody who went down to Jeff Epstein's island was being very, very foolish because, Epstein went out and he courted these very powerful, influential people, brought them on down to his little private pleasure palace in the Caribbean, and made available these underage girls. And I can't imagine anybody, being willing to walk into that situation, knowing that Epstein had to have that place wired with microphones and cameras in order to run a blackmail operation. And certainly the way that Acosta did cut Epstein loose with this effectively no prison sentence for all of these basically statutory rapes of underage girls, it does seem like Epstein did have the goods on somebody who was able to yank a leash, either Gonzalez's leash or Acosta's leash. And I share your concerns about Acosta. I don't think he should be in government. If he himself is open to blackmail, then he should be out. In fact, at this point, I think the best thing that could happen in regards to Epstein is we find out everybody who was on that island and just say, by default, we presume they're being blackmailed and therefore they are not working for us or the nation or the American people, and we should just kick them on out. And again, people would have to have been just stupid to even go down there in the first place, and yet we know they did. We know Bill Clinton went down there. We know that the prince, one of the princes, went down there. I mean,
Andrew.
Yeah, Prince Andrew. How stupid do these people have to be? It's such an obvious honey trap. Anyway, listen, we got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back with a couple more phone calls. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Edward Snowden is back out there on Twitter saying, if a spy agency by any method intercepts, copies, or reviews your communications, they have spied on you. And this is a pushback because Hillary's defenders have seized on Trump's use of the phrase a wiretap to say, no, it did not happen. Wiretaps don't even exist anymore. Therefore, the spying didn't happen. Well, as both Carrie Ann and Sean Spicer have made it very clear, Trump's use of wiretapping was a generalization, and we know the spy agencies have all kinds of things to spy on you. In fact, we've got another revelation about the iPhone a little bit further in the show. Laser mics, microwave mics, submillimeter scanning, thermograph, whatever. They got all kinds of toys. The one area in which the spies really are like the movies is Q Branch. All kinds of cute little toys out there to do these little things with. Okay, Senator Schumer is now calling on Democrats to boycott the Neil Gorsuch vote while Trump is under FBI investigation. They're still pounding on, they're still trying to find some way that they can stage a coup d'etat in this country to get rid of the people's choice for president. And they're not going to be happy until they start a civil war. All right, we're going to grab a couple more phone calls. John in Michigan. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha. I'd like to just reinforce that gentleman that was talking about Steve Pachanik. It was a great presentation that he gave, and there was a lot more to back up what he was talking about than just the fact that he was in the Bush administration for 18 months doing this. He really established his early history with Washington, D.C. He claims to be a person from Colorado, but his mother was head of the EPA. He's really a sleeping. There's a chance he could be just a sleeping mole, and that he should really be. All of this should really be brought out. So if you get a chance, it was the third hour on Alex's show, and I think you would enjoy it. And also, someone brought up the Clinton's comment during the debate about the time it would take. Well, if she goes back, she'll find out that her husband, I believe, gave the Koreans, it was either him or the Rumsfeld, the ability to do the atomic or nuclear weapons. So
yeah, that was that Chinagate scandal where the Bill Clinton, as part of his re-election campaign, was using his authority as president to authorize the sale to China and also some in Korea of highly sensitive U.S. technology. Some of it was indirect, where an American company was authorized to do business with North Korea, and in the process of which some technology was transferred, and all this money was pouring in from Asian businessmen, Chinese businessmen, and Chinese intelligence into Bill Clinton's re-election campaign. And so when we look at the possibility that Hillary was selling secrets to foreign interests in exchange for donations to her so-called charitable foundation, we come to understand this has been business as usual for this government for a very, very long time. Anyway, John, we're going to let you go. We're running tight on time, and we're going to switch over real quick to Mark in Florida. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Thank you, Mike, and I'll try to be real quick. I got three quick points. You said there's 16 or 17 intelligence agencies. Is any of them listed as the House of Representatives or the United States Senate?
No, there's no intelligence in the House of Representatives or the United States Senate.
Okay. Now, as far as secret and classified information, which Comey can't comment on anything, that just invites corruption. There's a thing called an Amber Alert, or they've been advertising see something, say something. Yet these agents see nothing and say nothing.
Well, the Amber Alert is not coded into law. It is a social convention to try and deal with missing children, some of whom have just run away, and others of whom have fallen victim to various nefarious parties. The Amber Alert is not really a legal classification of any kind. It's a social convention. Anyway, listen, we've got to take another break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call, Mark. We're going to close the phone lines for a little while because we've got a lot of news to get through yet today. So we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And, you know, thinking on back to this 18-year-old kid who's been arrested, Jewish kid, arrested for bomb threats against Jewish centers, it basically validates Donald Trump. Because back in February when this was all starting up, he suggested the threats could have been a false flag to make people look bad, and of course the corporate media just climbed all over him. How could you even begin to suggest that these are fakes? And it turns out that's exactly what it was. It was a hate crime hoax. Now then, let's turn to the war zones, emphasis on the plural. The other day we were reporting on how the so-called moderate terrorists, the ones the U.S. government is funding with your dollars, had basically merged with Al-Qaeda in preparation for an attack on Hama. The attack is now underway, and the Syrian government forces are having a very hard time of it, still keeping this thing going long past its X date. Article coming out of Activist Post saying that Israel's continued provocations with Syria and Russia risk not just a regional war, but a possible world war. And the danger here is Russia has sent an unequivocal message to Israel: you are not allowed to go into Syria anymore. Netanyahu's come on back and said, we're going to go on going into Syria, and there's nothing you can do about it. And when we look at some of these people who are out there, like Netanyahu, Erdogan, Poroshenko, these are people clinging to power by the only way they know how: chaos and warfare. And our government's playing the same game. They're pushing for all these wars in part because of prior history, where if there's a big war going on, the American people will forget all about their complaints against the government. They'll forget about high taxes, corruption, abusive regulation, and they'll throw the flag, a snappy salute, and fling their money and their babies onto the designated enemy bayonets. But it's not going to happen that way this time. It's a very, very different world, thanks to the Internet and the independent media. And those glory days of the Cold War are pretty much gone, and they will not be coming back. It's like I've said before, go back to The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Just read that first chapter, the things that anybody must have to guarantee victory. It's a very long list, and you have to have them all or you will not win. And two of the most important is a military that believes in the moral rightness of the war so that they will fight fiercely and if necessary die in it. And you have to have a civilian population that believes in the moral rightness of the war so that they will bear the burdens that war brings even to the victorious side. And the U.S. government has neither of those. And it is very, very reckless. I think if we get into an actual hot war, a hot world war, the United States is going to lose it here. Now, Tillerson has confirmed that there are U.S. plans for long-term military presence in Iraq. In other words, they're garrisoning Iraq, just like they're garrisoning Afghanistan. These aren't humanitarian interventions. They were basically invasions, conquest. And now they're going to set up forts and sneer at the people and say, you're ours now. Over in Ukraine, little bit of a whoopsie. Some people are saying it may have been sabotage, but apparently the largest munitions depot in Ukraine, in Balakleya, in the Kharkov region, has gone up in flames and explosions. They've had to evacuate 20,000 people from the immediate area. Apparently windows being shattered, huge amounts of damage. All of these munitions just going on up. It's a spectacular mess, if you will. I imagine it would be fun watching from a distance, but if you're living next door to it, not so much. A former Russian lawmaker has been gunned down in broad daylight in Kiev. Denis Voronenkov, and he was a former Russian lawmaker. Apparently he was actually wanted by Russia under fraud allegations. Even Russia has their problem with politicians who are corrupt. But apparently he was simply shot twice in the head near the main entrance to Kiev's Premier Palace Hotel. A lot of assassinations going on, a lot of wet work. Now, the other day we were talking about how a terror attack or an armed incident was thwarted in Belarus, and Belarus was starting to point the fingers all over the place. But we're seeing this story today from FortRush.com, where the United States is now training activists in Belarus to promote reforms. How many times have we heard that before? Oh, we're sending in the NGOs to promote reforms in Iran, in Panama, in Chile, in Syria, in Iran again, in Kiev. And this is all being done by U.S. aid, which is now recognized as an agency for regime change. Russia's kicked them out. Said, get on out of here. They caught them funding opposition and trying to stir up trouble. And of course, the official word is the Americans are encouraging active participation by the citizens of Belarus in democratic processes. That is, they get to participate in the democratic process as long as they vote in for the people that the United States wants to be running the country. They're still playing these regime change games even though the world has come to recognize this is what's going on. These are not organic internal revolutions. These are sponsored from outside to overthrow democratically elected governments and replace them with puppet rulers. Now, as you know, there was a little bit of a, call it a debate, between China and the United States when the United States flew a B-1 bomber along the border with China. And apparently China's point is that the B-1 bomber flew through an air defense identification zone set up by China. And the United States says, well, we don't recognize air defense identification zones, at which point China came on back and said, you set them up all the time. The United States declares these air defense identification zones to extend their territorial airspace, and we have just as much right. And China sent fighters up to the B-1 and said, you're operating illegally in closed airspace, please leave, which the B-1 did. But it was clearly a provocation here. Now, interesting article. This is out of Desert Peace. And it says, as you know, Israel's government has been very concerned about the demographic bomb, that Palestinians are having lots and lots of kids, no matter how many the IDF shoot down. And they're concerned about reaching a point where the Palestinian population of Israel is greater than that of Israeli Jews, at which point it definitely crosses the line into clearly an apartheid state when you have an ethnic minority ruling the rest of the country. And it looks like the problem may be getting worse because apparently a lot of people who have moved to Israel have decided that maybe they really were better off back home, and they're starting to leave. And apparently secular Jews are now saying 36% of secular Jews are saying they would leave the country. They would leave Israel if they could. So Israel's government is not making the people of Israel very happy, and the people of Israel are looking to get on out. Now then, let's get on back to weapons of war and the F-35 which has another problem that has surfaced. And it has to do with the F-35C, the naval variant. Now, when they first put this thing on out there, they discovered it could not land on aircraft carriers because the arresting hook was too close to the main landing gear. So that when the aircraft was landing on that deck, the main landing gear would slap the arrestor wire down flat on the deck so that the arrestor hook couldn't catch it. Well, they fixed that by redesigning the arrestor hook. But there is a new problem, because apparently pilots aboard the USS George Washington are saying that the plane is being hurled off the deck so fast they can't read their instruments. They're getting physical pain because the F-35 itself is underpowered and overweight, and so the catapult is having to do a lot more force to get it up above stall speed. And that excess force is also cracking the nose gear. And I'm sure over at the Pentagram, they're going to have a new solution. We'll just build bigger aircraft carriers. They'll be miles long. They'll be impressive. They'll cost a fortune, but hey, we've got lots and lots of money around here somewhere. Current estimates are that 10 trillion, with a T, dollars have vanished into the Pentagon, and nobody knows where it went. Do you know the Pentagon has never been audited? They've never been audited since it started. And $10 trillion in taxpayer money has gone missing since 1996. $1 trillion here, $1 trillion there, and soon you're talking some real money. And I think that Donald Trump probably would have been well advised to not increase the military's budget until the military are a little bit better on their bookkeeping as to where all of this is going. That's a lot of money, $10 trillion here. All right, let's talk about the civilian economy now. Apparently, more than 3,500 retail stores are getting ready to close all across America in the next few months. Right now, we're living through the worst retail downturn in U.S. history. People are not going to the stores. They don't have the cash to buy things. They do not want to put anything on their credit card. It is all locking up. And, of course, the industry is still reeling from the announcement made by Sears that they're not going to be able to keep their doors open much longer. They're basically telegraphing Sears is going to go away. Talk about an iconic company. It's a shock, but when you look over the last few years at how many iconic American companies have gone away, are in the process of going away. Now, Sears tends to be what are called anchor tenants at shopping malls. And the anchor tenants, the large department stores, are what pull customers into the shopping malls. Then, after they're at the department store, they'll go down the mall to the little boutique stores and be induced to spend a little bit more money there. If you lose your anchor tenants, your total traffic, your volume of customers to that shopping mall goes down as a whole. As we mentioned the other day, Payless is getting ready to file for bankruptcy. We're seeing chains like Abercrombie & Fitch, American Apparel, Guess are shutting down their stores, along with Macy's, JCPenney, Kmart, and of course, Sears. Sears may just go away completely. Boy, I remember Sears from when I was a kid. That Sears catalog. Oh my goodness, we can look at the Sears catalog. Look at the ladies' lingerie when our parents aren't around. And it's like something that you think is always going to be there. There's always going to be a Sears. Well, maybe not here. Now, LI Financial is slashing guidance as used car prices suffer the worst decline in 20 years. That would have been good news for Claire and I if our Honda had not been returned to us. But basically, we're seeing the emergence of subprime used car loans. And boy, if anybody had any money right now, this is a great time to buy cars, used car or new car. I'm looking at the ads on TV. It's just amazing, the deals that you can get. And so they're loosening the rules, make the sales, get the loan apps signed, and they're bundling the loan apps and they're putting those out. They're repeating the 2008 mortgage-backed security fraud meltdown, only this time it's car loans. We love to bundle, and they're breaking that securitization chain. In the old days, if I were a banker and I was going to loan you money, I would take care that you would be able to repay it. In the days of bundling, I'm there to basically get you to sign the loan papers, and then I pass them off to somebody else, and I'm off the hook. I've made my money. If the loan defaults, it's not my problem specifically. It's everybody's problem generally. Apparently down in Australia, they're going through their burst of the real estate bubble down there. And apparently major cities all across Australia are seeing major drops, a major slide. Everybody pumped in the money, ran up the prices, sold out. It's a bump and dump with real estate. Remember what we said the other day about stocks. If you buy a stock for $10 and you're looking at the stock ticker and it says, oh, it's up, it's up, it's up, and you say, oh, I'm richer. No, you're not. That stock or that house is only worth what you get for it when you sell it. And when there's a major sell-off, you may not be in profits at all. You may think you are. On paper, it looks really good. Now, speaking of looking good on paper, apparently Rand Paul is out there saying that Paul Ryan has sold Donald Trump a bill of goods on the Ryan health care bill. And basically what it is a repackaging, rebranding of the major components of Obamacare, in particular those that are pandering to the health insurance industry. The health care policies will continue to have sky-high prices. They'll continue to have sky-high deductibles. And it's going to be, it's a continuation of the same thing all over again. And they're trying to rush that one through to head off a complete repeal. And part of the problem is that a lot of those GOP politicians in Congress are invested in those same health insurance companies. And they're going to turn on Donald Trump and fight the repeal because they're making money off the system as it is today, and therein lies the real root of all the problems we're seeing coming out of Washington, D.C. The politicians see it as a get-rich-quick scheme and not a whole heck of a lot else. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, speaking of Paul Ryan, there is a new poll out there, and basically it was asking the American people, who do you trust to do the right thing for the country? This is a CBS poll, and the poll respondents came back, 59% trust Donald Trump to do the right thing for the country. Only 7% gave that same rating to Paul Ryan. So he's not looking very good right now, but they're all trying to serve their various masters. And that's one of the reasons they hate Donald Trump, because Donald Trump, with his independence, is only underscoring how all of the other establishment politicians are bought and paid for. And they were perfectly happy with that arrangement. They just didn't want you to know about it. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Brandon in New York, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I don't know if you touched on this. I'm just joining the program now, but I've been curious to figure out if there's been any discussions as to where Obama might be, because, I mean, Holder made that announcement about 2 weeks ago that Obama was coming back for some sort of a comeback or something. And since then, there's been no trace of the guy. And, you know, I'm reading Twitter and things have suggested that he may be in some sort of Asian country for now. But I don't know if you've touched upon it or have a comment about it.
Well, we didn't talk about it today. I mean, obviously, a short while ago, Obama was here on the island of Oahu. Maybe that's who stole our Honda. I hadn't even thought about that. But I don't know if he's still here, and I don't know where he has gone. Obviously, now that he's no longer the president, there is much less transparency about where he is. But I would imagine, based on his little hopscotch travel plans from his Washington, D.C. lair across America and then here to Oahu. I think that he's trying to basically meet with people and try and build a coalition of forces around the world to try and get Donald Trump out. And to do that, obviously, he's pandering to the globalists and the New World Order people. And so as a result, I would expect that probably less Asia and more he's going to be going up to Brussels by a circuitous route.
Do you think, with regards to this whole thing with the wiretapping, that, you know, you think he'll want to not come back for a little bit just to see if this dies down, or you think it has nothing to do with what Trump did with kind of, you know, blasting him on Twitter about being wiretapped?
I think at this point Obama is convinced that he is as immune to the consequences of his actions as the Clintons or the Bushes. And under our current system, he may well be right. Now, following a collapse of the federal government and we form a new government, all bets are off. And I would expect all of these people to skedaddle down to that big, huge chunk of land the Bush family just bought down there in South America.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Mike.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. I mean, that place is so big. How big is it? They could all live there and never have to look at each other ever again. That's how big that place is. We're going to take a break for station identification, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. It's our third hour. And somebody just sent me a link to hatecrimehoaxes.com, which we have put up at whatreallyhappened.com. But it's an easy enough name to remember, hatecrimehoaxes.com, and this website tracks hate crime hoaxes in real time, and obviously their top story is this Jewish teenager who has been arrested for making bomb threats against Jewish centers all over the world pretty much. So they've got that at the top. But I'm looking at this, and what a huge, huge number of these stories are out there. Woman pleads guilty to fake Donald Trump-inspired hate crime. University of Michigan student pleads guilty to reporting fake hate crime after Trump's election. Wisconsin college student put anti-Muslim graffiti on their own door. Lakeville officials say black special ed student behind racist graffiti. And on and on and on and on. There's a lot of it. In fact, there's even more of it than I was aware of. Jewish student paints swastika on own door. Gay YouTuber faked hate crime attack on himself. Woman faked sex assault claim because she was distraught over election, and so forth and so on. You know, we've lost something in our culture. We've lost common sense, courtesy, ethics, morality. And I don't know if it's because our leadership is setting such a terrible example for everybody else to follow, or if it's just the side effects of being zoned out on all of these prescription psychiatric medications. But it does feel like our entire society, and not just Wall Street and the federal government, are totally dysfunctional at this point here. Now let's turn over to immigration. Austria has now doubled their cash offer for migrants to leave the country. And they're trying to repatriate 50,000 asylum seekers, and they had issued a cash offer of 500 euros to just go back home. That apparently didn't work. So now the offer is 1,000 euros, which is about the same thing in U.S. dollars, 1,080 U.S. dollars, to leave the country, not have to be chased down, put on a bus. Out in California, the city of Malibu has become a sanctuary city, and you wouldn't, I mean, I don't know about you. I've been to Malibu many, many times, especially when I was working in the film industry. And it's not exactly a place you'd think of as having a huge immigrant population, but apparently no one's baby or house in Malibu is being cared for without illegal immigrant labor. So, who knows what's going on out there. Apparently, getting over to Brexit, Michael Barnier, who's one of the Brexit negotiators, is saying that the EU is determined to seal a, quote, unique, end quote, trade deal with Britain as soon as possible. And so what Brussels is clearly trying to do is to find some other way to functionally keep Great Britain enslaved by the EU, so that Brexit is just name only. Yes, we're an independent Great Britain, but we're still locked to Brussels by the trade treaty. We're still locked to the open borders policy by this treaty. They're basically trying to find a way to render the purpose of Brexit null and void, to leave it just a hollow shell, merely a label. And I don't think that's going to work very well. Over in Germany, latest polls there are showing 59% of the German people want a change in leadership. And obviously this is not looking good for Angela Merkel, who I think was very, very reckless in declaring she was going to run for the chancellorship again, especially with the people of Germany this openly hostile to her globalist agenda. Now, there's another little interesting article. This came out of DW.com, how Germany's Foreign Intelligence Agency recruits young hackers. And the spin of the story is that in this world where Russia is hacking this and Russia is hacking that, Germany's Federal Intelligence Agency is recruiting young hackers to come on in and save the country. And they're claiming that this is to recognize and assess potentially damaging espionage activities and prevent or minimize the fallout. I imagine along the way, some of these kids might be told, rig the election for Merkel. When you look at how her numbers are falling, the only reason she's staying in the race is like Hillary Clinton, she thinks she can steal it. And we have seen so many stolen elections in recent time. British police are now saying that Nigel Farage's defeat 2 years ago was by election fraud. Now, the United States is preparing a case to link North Korea to the $81 million New York Fed bank heist. Now, when it all happened, everybody said, we have no idea. They came and went, and the hackers were trying to get a huge amount of money. They didn't get all that they wanted, but they did get $81 million from Bangladesh's account at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York last year. And now they're out there saying, oh, well, we know it was North Korea. Let's demonize North Korea, those gosh darn North Koreans. Well, North Korea is a little behind the times with regards to the Internet. Back in 2014, they only had one block of IP addresses for the entire country. That means just 256 IP addresses for the whole country. They may have a little bit more now, but it isn't shaping up to be a hotbed of hacker activity. And let us not forget the CIA's Umbrage program, which is set up to frame third parties for hacker attacks. From this day forward, we should not ever assume that when somebody says this country is behind this hacking attack, that that's really what's going on. When they say we have found digital fingerprints identifying the culprit, no, what you have found is the frame-up. Who they want you to think did it. Russia, North Korea. Now the other day, let's do a quick shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. The other day we were talking about this revelation that Android phones were discovered to have malware in them, already installed at the point of sale. And the phone manufacturers were saying, it's certainly not us, it's happening someplace along the supply chain. Everybody's pointing fingers, but apparently WikiLeaks has released some more of those CIA documents, including a program called Night Skies. And apparently Night Skies is the CIA program to insert spyware in factory fresh iPhones. So it's not just the Androids that are being targeted. And apparently, according to the Night Skies documents, the CIA has been installing malware in iPhones since at least 2008 through the suppliers. And they're going to be releasing more of those documents. So denials by the cell phone manufacturers that they don't know where the malware is coming from just fell flat on their face. The cell phones are being manufactured with spyware in there at the behest of the CIA and presumably the NSA as well. Now, another story coming out of the Register in Great Britain. Apparently somebody is back to playing around with those Siemens industrial controllers, and apparently they have discovered a new malware that's disguised as a legitimate firmware update for these Siemens digital controllers, has apparently infected industrial equipment worldwide over the last 4 years. Now, this cyber weapon, malware, is packaged as software to be installed on Siemens programmable logic controllers, PLC. At least 10 industrial plants, 7 of which are in the U.S., were found running this infected firmware. And they're describing it as crimeware. They don't know what it's supposed to do. Whatever its purpose is, it hasn't been triggered yet. But it's definitely out there. Now, as you know, if you are really concerned about the long-term future of your country, or your county, or your city, or your state, you do want to focus on education, real education, not just indoctrination, but actually teaching your kids basic skills. And apparently, America's public education system is failing the citizens of Detroit, where the Detroit Regional Workforce Fund reports that 47% of people in Detroit are functionally illiterate. In the Detroit suburbs, illiteracy is 1/3 the population. That is astoundingly bad. Being able to read and write is essential to getting a job. Math skills are essential to getting a job. And America's public education system has let all these people down. I'm sure they're convinced that Al Gore is right about human-caused global warming. I'm sure they're convinced that the Second Amendment does not, in fact, confer an individual right to keep and bear weapons on the American people. Thank you, Common Core. But something has gone hideously wrong with this federally controlled education system when you have 47% of the people in Detroit unable to read and write effectively. We talk about the deliberate dumbing down of America. It seems to be right in front of us. It seems to be right in front of us. Speaking of Al Gore, let's talk about human-caused global warming. Apparently over in Ireland, the Irish motorists are being warned to be very, very careful. There's apparently another storm of rain and snow coming in. It's going to make driving conditions very, very dangerous. They've issued a status yellow weather warning to the Irish drivers over there. Meanwhile, an Arctic front is bringing snow showers to Rhode Island. Actually, it happened yesterday. We're officially in spring now, and we're still getting snow and ice. Now, Donald Trump's Environmental Protection Agency has granted Flint, Michigan, $100 million to clean up their water system. It's a good start. It's overdue. And the money is going to be used to replace the city's badly corroded and lead-tainted system of water pipes. Unfortunately, as we've discovered since the Flint scandal erupted, Flint was not alone. Erin Brockovich, who was made famous by the movie with her name on it, about the hexavalent chromium scandal out in California, PG&E. They've mounted a project where they are doing testing of water all across the country, and they are finding thousands and thousands of cities and towns where the water coming out of your faucet is dangerous. It is harmful. Now, if you're concerned about the water where you are and you don't trust your local water board's official reports, you can, for about $20, $30, get a water testing kit from places like eBay. We bought one here. It had about 6 different tests in there, and I'm happy to say we have very good water coming out of our faucet here on Oahu. It's very hard water, which makes sense because we're sucking it out from inside an extinct volcano. But other than that, no lead, no microbes, and basically good water, which we were very, very happy to hear. but other places may not be so fortunate, and you need to know. Now, of course, the bottled water companies love the fact that tap water across the country is becoming dangerous, because as people learn they cannot drink or cook with the water coming from the faucet, what do? They go to the bottled water companies. The goal of the money junkies is to force you to have to pay for every single necessity of life. Food, power, now water, eventually air. There'll be an air bill. You don't pay your air bill, we're shutting off the valve. There are actually booths in the more polluted areas of Japan where if the smog is getting to you, you step into the booth, you put your money in the machine, and you can spend 5 minutes breathing filtered, clean, pure air to revive yourself. That's getting really, really out there. Apparently, ING Bank has started selling their loan shares in the controversial Dakota Access Pipeline project. And apparently, they're concerned that this campaign to stop the pipeline it has not itself been stopped. It's still moving forward. And, of course, the people at the Standing Rock Reservation are viewing this as a victory. Yank the funding. And a lot of people are asking, why didn't they follow the original pipeline right-of-way, which went outside the Sioux lands? Well, because it went near a town full of white people. That's why we can't expose white people to all these toxic petrochemicals. Just send it across the Native American reservation. What are they going to do? You know, kill Colonel Custer again? Here's a good story, I think, that really underscores that story about Detroit being 47% functionally illiterate. Over in Great Britain, a student, Miles Solomon, discovered an error in NASA's data from the International Space Station, specifically the radiation sensors. Now, this kid's 17 years old. He's from Tapton School in Sheffield, and he wrote into NASA with his documentation. NASA came on back, said, "We appreciate it. You are right, we messed up," and they've now invited him to help analyze and solve the problem. And they're trading spreadsheets back and forth. Now, the research was part of the TIMPIX project from the Institute for Research in Schools, which gives students in Great Britain the chance to work on data from the space station. And that's where this student, Miles Solomon, found this. I remember when I was a kid, and again, this was in the heyday of the space race, Project Mercury, Project Gemini, and everybody was in love with science. Science was the big deal in school. And I loved it, obviously. And these days, it's almost like it really is being de-emphasized. Because to actively participate in science means you have to think, you have to analyze, you have to be logical, you have to double-check the facts, and those are skills that our current government sees as a threat in the general population. And we've certainly seen our so-called science TV channels be turned into instruments of propaganda. Oh yes, global warming, the swine flu pandemic of 2009. Now, NASA's having another little bit of a problem. The Curiosity rover is starting to show cracks in the wheels. And it is a real problem. How do you design a wheel that's lightweight and can survive driving over rocks and gravel for a considerable amount of time? And unfortunately, images are showing that the wheels are beginning to crack, and that can be a real problem. Now, these wheels are made out of aluminum. There are no tires on them. The headline in the original article was kind of fraudulent. And they found 2 small breaks on the rover's left middle wheel. Now, obviously, this may just be a one-off, but if it turns out the wheels are starting to fail, there could be hairline cracks that are not visible to the cameras. And that would be the end of the mission. And that would be a real shame, because curiosity has found a lot of stuff. They've actually found a lot of evidence that NASA is still equivocating about whether it means life or not. Could be, maybe, sort of, might be. And as I learned back on Viking, there is a political bias against confirming indigenous life anywhere else but Earth, out of fear that it would shake things up. It's the same reason when Marco Polo returned from his explorations of China, the Dominicans threw him in a dungeon, because the church feared that general public awareness of another civilization out to the east who had never even heard of Jesus was a threat to their power. Fortunately, eventually, word about what Marco Polo had found leaked out from the people who'd been with him, and Marco Polo was eventually released and given his due as a great explorer. But very often governments don't want you to know things if they think it might actually reduce their hold over you. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, if you would care to call on in. Boy, a lot of warplanes out there flying around. We've been keeping an eye lately on Bogoslav volcano. It's up in the Aleutian Islands, and it has been off and on in this eruption sequence since the middle of last December. There have been 37 eruptions. I get the automatic alerts here from the USGS, and it is of concern because the Aleutian Islands represent one of the main air transit corridors between Asia and the United States, and so they're constantly having to reroute traffic back and forth. For us here in Hawaii, our concern is that any time there's a large volcano in the Aleutian Islands and part of it sloughs off into the ocean, or there's a major associated earthquake, we get tsunamis here. All right, let's take a phone call. Philip in Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, aloha snack bar.
Aloha snack bar.
Yeah, I like to use that and explain it to them, make fun of that insanity that we're witnessing with the Muslim robots running around killing each other. But anyway, getting back to what you were talking about, that malware that's in these products that are being put out. I remember when the Vault 7 information broke a couple of weeks ago, ABC News did a report, and Brian Ross, to his credit, noted that Samsung's feigned outrage over that was kind of disingenuous because of the fact that they put out a notice back in 2014 warning their customers to be careful about what they said around their televisions. You remember that?
I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, these corporations that are cooperating with these intelligence agencies and things, putting this malware and stuff and surveillance devices built into their systems, it's sad. These people, they just lie, just like the deep state's doing, lying about everything.
Well, you know, the fact of the matter is the government can bring quite a bit of coercive pressure onto the executives of a company, so that even if the executives don't want to go along with this stuff, they can always find a lever. Remember during the Franklin scandal, where the members of Congress simply went to Discovery Channel and said, if you run this, we will pass laws that will drive you out of business. They could do the same thing to all these computer companies. They could say, we're going to revoke the H-1B visas. We're going to throw tons and tons of regulatory compliance on you and drive you out of business. And that's a very real threat when you're dealing with a criminal government to begin with. There's also the fact that with all the surveillance that's been going on key people going back to Echelon and Five Eyes, they may have information with which they can blackmail some of these individuals. Or there may be a parallel program to Mockingbird, where the goal is not to have the top executives at the corporate media CIA assets, but to make sure CIA assets are CEOs of major corporations, including all of these computers. There's any one of several ways that this can be brought about. But all of this, of course, is a violation not just of the Fourth Amendment, but the bottom of the Fifth Amendment, where it says the government is not allowed to use your personal property without compensation. And now we're finding out that all of our computers, all of our tablets, all of our smartphones are doing work for the U.S. government, and we're not getting paid a single penny for it.
Well, I forgot about that aspect that there can be blackmailing these companies and hostage holding, so to speak. But weren't they incentivizing these corporations to do that as well?
They could very well have been doing that. I remember there was a big scandal in Europe with a company called Crypto AG that put out a recreated Enigma machine after World War II, and it turned out the NSA had bribed the owner of the company with a huge amount of money to put a backdoor into that system. So, yeah, whatever it takes to get what they want, that's what they're going to do.
Well, I tell you what, we are really in some terrible, perilous times here, because you can't believe anything that's coming out of the government basically now with regards to any of these boogeymen that they're putting out there, saying that, like you just mentioned recently, about they're trying to blame North Korea now for this Federal Reserve heist.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't believe anything.
All right, Philip, going to have to let you go. Got to take another break for commercials. Back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. I want to take a quick step back here to the terror attack at Parliament, and it's now being reported that this assailant was known to MI5. They knew this guy was a problem, and still the terror attack happened, and it proves to us the war on terror, as it is presently constituted, does not really work. Now, apparently over in India, as you know, they have farmers who grow opium poppies, and apparently their biggest problem right now are the parrots, who will come on in to the poppy fields and get stoned chewing on those bulbs underneath the buds, and they've learned how not to make any noise, not squawk while they're doing it, so that they can't get chased on out. Just what we need. Junkie parrots here. All right, let's go back to the phones. Mark in Philadelphia, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Is that what Jimmy Buffett, why he named his followers the parrot heads?
Could be. Could be. Well, you know, that to me that's insulting. If I was a fan, I did like his music, but I view being termed a parrot head as, you know, I don't know where it's coming from. Maybe it was meant well, but it doesn't come across very good.
Yeah, well, I want to bring to your attention a video I watched last night. And this video is an interview with a woman, and I don't know her name. There's no name given, but she is coming from Missouri. She worked for, and she was very much in support of the refugee resettlement program. And it turns out that at a certain point, she just couldn't go along with it anymore because what was happening just didn't make any sense. This interview is put forth by a man named Josh Tolley, Tolley. I forwarded it to you. I didn't know your email address, but I made it up, Michael, at whatreallyhappened.com. Is that your email address?
Well, it isn't, but it will get through to me anyway, because anything sent to @whatreallyhappened.com will reach me. And
okay,
I'm trying to look for it. What was the name of the person doing the interview?
Josh Tolley, but the interview is a link to a video down below and further down, because I forwarded it to a few people. But anyway, the video was put up a week ago, March 16th, and the title is "Diseased Refugees Obtaining Social SSN and Passport Upon Arrival." And what she details, she gives details to these the refugees that are coming in are not being vetted. Then when they arrive, they're put in a process of getting a Social Security number, and then also put on long-term disability, Social Security disability, and then they also get a passport, and there's given some cash. And this is being 34,000 have arrived in Missouri since from October through February, she says, with a cap of 50,000. So there's 16,000 more left until the end of the fiscal year ending in September. So anyway, there's a lot more details to this video. It's an hour long. I encourage you to watch it. I encourage others to go to this Josh Tolley's YouTube. I have nothing to do with him, but this is a really good interview, and there's a lot of details, and I'm telling you, it'll stir your beans and steam you up pretty quick. It's and it's being supported on the ground by 3 groups: the Jewish Vocational Services, Catholic Charities, and also the Lutheran Church, both in Kansas City and in St. Louis, and I'm sure that it's probably happening in other places too across our nation. And this is something that if Americans watch this, it will surely stir them up in a way that it'll fire them up. It'll get you maybe damn mad, because we've got people waiting in line for these kinds of services who've been waiting for years and keep getting denied, including veterans, homeless veterans, and then these people come from across, from another land, and they just get, they get all these things,
they get
benefits.
right to the front of the line here. Actually, one of our members already posted that video to whatreallyhappened.com, and it's on the main page. And this is not a new issue. As when they first started that open border situation, people were pointing out that these refugees and illegal immigrants coming into the country without any vetting were bringing back contagious diseases that had previously been eradicated inside the United States. There was even a major problem with the Border Patrol workers. The ICE people were getting sick. And they were having staff shortages because so many of these ICE agents, they had no immunity to these illnesses because they haven't been in this country for a long time, and they were coming down very, very ill. We've had, obviously, scabies coming on in, H1N1, AIDS, in one case, bubonic plague, and who knows what all else. But these globalists are so intent on blurring us all together that the idea that they could trigger an actual pandemic and wipe out a significant part of the global population, I don't know, maybe that's ultimately what they want to do, and find a way to do it that doesn't affect the real estate and the buildings and all the other good things that they covet. But it is a medical disaster right now.
Well, I encourage people to go to watch that video. Josh Tolley, a week ago, deceased refugees obtaining SSN and passport upon arrival, because there's some details there that I haven't heard of before. I know generally we understand what's going on, but this gives detail, and she comes across genuine and sincere, and I think it's valid. So anyway, I'll let it go at that. Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you very much. And like I said, one of our members had already posted that video. It is on the main page at whatreallyhappened.com. Now, on that same topic about the high costs of illegal immigration and refugees, there's an article over at Investment Watch blog saying that California now has the worst roads in America while having the happiest, well-fed illegal aliens. And we know that the cost of maintaining that illegal immigrant population in California is running close to $30 million a year, which California simply cannot afford. So they cut back on things like taking care of the roads. Now, the good news is that up until recently, Hawaii had the worst roads in America. Well, we're number 2, and we can just say things are all much better here. Actually, not. Our roads are getting worse. It's just California went past us on that one. Okay, back to the phones. Chip in North Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Got a little out-of-the-box thought here for you. I know it won't happen, but it'd be interesting for Trump to do, since you can't figure out the NSA and all the secret deep state stuff. I think he needs to bring Andrew Snowden or Julian Assange back and put him in charge of finding out the stink.
I think that would be a very, very good thing indeed to do, but I agree it's probably not going to happen. I'm sure Donald Trump is well aware that if he pushes too hard on the establishment, they're going to give him the Kennedy treatment.
Well, somebody needs to get down to the bottom of it, and I think it is bigger than what Trump can do himself, but it takes a criminal to find a criminal.
Well, I disagree with that. I disagree with that. We're certainly getting to the bottom of it, and we're crowdsourcing the investigation, which means there is no one point where the establishment can end the investigation by killing a single individual. And where people like Michael Hastings committed their major mistake was they put all of their information in a single location, and that's what made themselves a target. Same thing with Vincent Foster. Vincent Foster had a dead man's switch with all kinds of incriminating information, but he made the mistake of leaving it in his White House office safe. So after he was suicided, the Secret Service logs showed a special technical team from the Pentagon was shown into Foster's office, and when the Park Police got there to seal the office as a potential crime scene, the office had been cleaned out. the safe was empty and all the paperwork had been looted by Hillary Clinton's chief of staff. And if you're involved in these kind of investigations, the sooner you go public, the sooner you're going to be safe again. You shouldn't sit on any of this information. Or if you have to keep it under wraps because you're looking for confirmation, spread it out all over the place. Have 20, 30 people that you trust acting as your dead man switches. And let that be known, and that's what will keep you safe. I'm pretty sure that's the reason Hillary Clinton is still alive. She's a major threat to so many people, but I'm sure that she has made it very clear that if something untoward were to happen to her, all kinds of incriminating information would immediately be made public, and careers would be ruined.
Well, I feel like the coup has been exposed with Trump getting in office. He's the first outsider that's been elected in I don't know how long. You know, the two-party system has been. It didn't matter A or B. They were both the same. So I'm not sure when it got taken over, but I think the president's just been the puppet.
I think that it's always been a long process of eroding the authority of the civil government and transferring it to corporate interests. But I do think it really took off following the assassination of John F. Kennedy, where the Federal Reserve was able to get the silver out of our coinage and achieve their dream of virtual money, instantly created money, fantasy money, whatever you want to call it, because that happened right after the Kennedy assassination. Kennedy wanted to go back to a silver-based currency. That was a dire threat to the Federal Reserve. And again, I find it very illuminating that one of the members of the Warren Commission was John J. McCloy, president of the Chase Manhattan Bank, president of the World Bank. And I don't care how good a banker he is, he's simply not qualified to be investigating the murder of a president. So it logically follows he was there to make sure that the links between the assassination and the money junkies remained hidden.
Well, instead of leaving a will, I plan on leaving a buried treasure map. That's a good way to go out, I think.
Okay, well, if that's what you want to do. Got to have some treasure to bury in the first place, though. And I gotta figure out how to get some treasure, but hey. Yeah, don't we all? Don't we all? And absolutely. All right, thanks an awful lot.
Appreciate it.
All right, the phone lines are open again, 800-313-9443. We got about a quarter of an hour left of the show here. Now, apparently back up in Europe, Erdogan is succeeding in angering just about everybody, and Angela Merkel is basically issuing, shall we put it, a threat to the government of Turkey that they're going to ban all public appearances by Turkish politicians in Germany. And of course, that is what Erdogan is saying. Oh, you're being like Nazis. You know, you're oppressing my people. You're a bunch of Nazis. And Erdogan is showing, as the Czech president said, Turkey is not ready to be part of the European Union when they have this kind of an us and them mentality. But I understand Erdogan is under a tremendous amount of pressure right now because he's pushing for this new referendum, which, if it passes, would grant him extraordinary new power and authority. Sort of like Adolf Hitler's Enabling Acts, or the Patriot Act here in the United States of America. All rulers want more power. There's never enough. Just like with money junkies, it doesn't matter how much money they have right now, they've got to have more, because it isn't the power and money they have right then and there, it's getting the new influx, the new rush, the new thrill, whether it's wealth or more power. And the same thing is true for George Soros. He dreams of a single global government and that he will live long enough to sit on that golden throne of planet Earth for at least a little while. And people who are that sociopathic, that focused on themselves, to the exclusion of all else, they represent a clear and present danger to human civilization as a whole. Because these are the people who create wars that kill millions and billions of people. These are the people who impoverish and send, condemn to starvation the vast majority of people on planet Earth. And our founding fathers were correct in trying to devise a government where those in power had strict limits on that power and authority, in order to keep them as harmless to the general welfare as possible. And we need to get back to that. Let's take another phone call. Terry in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, we're all against Agenda 21. However, you know, I think we do have a population growth problem. You know, not too many decades, and it can double again. What do you think the answer to that is?
Well, can you turn your speaker down because I'm hearing myself in the background? Yeah. Okay, there are a couple of issues. I understand there's a human population problem, and there always will be because sex is a lot more fun than dying. And our population growth has been accelerated by improvements in public hygiene and the elimination of natural predators against humans, and that really is a problem. But I am convinced that the human race does have a built-in population control mechanism, and it's called homosexuality. And if you go back and you study history, you will find that during times of enhanced social stress, poverty, hunger, starvation, political stress, you will find the per capita incidence of homosexuality goes up. Now, we know in other life forms, primarily in amphibians, examples of those life forms, certain frogs and things, can change gender spontaneously in a same-sex environment, or they can start acting in ways contrary to reproduction if the population density is too high. And I think that's what we've got here. And I find it very amazing that we have so many people out there talking about we need to control the human population. At the same time, they're bashing the gays and not seeing right in front of them that there's the safety mechanism we've evolved to have. And on that particular basis, not only do homosexuals have just as much right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as anybody else, they are essential to the long-term survival of the human race, in my humble opinion. And whether that really is going to be the ultimate long-term solution or not, I don't know. But right now, with all of these illnesses that are coming into the United States, with apparently the epicite gene has gone wild and birth rates are dropping off precipitously, plus you throw a nuclear world war on top of that, and I think the growing human population may not be the big problem that we all imagine it is. I'll tell you one thing, though. I get sick and tired of people coming up and saying, there's a population problem and I want somebody else to die or go without children to solve it. And when such people come up to me, I say, okay, I agree. There's a population problem. You want to do something about it? There's a very tall building over there. Feel free to jump off. Try and hit a banker on the way to the ground. And that is basically how I deal with that. After a while, I get really tired of anybody who's pushing any agenda as long as it doesn't inconvenience them. I want war in Russia, but I'm going to stay home. I think there's a population problem, but I'm going to have kids. I think that humans are warming the earth, but I'm going to have my big mansion. And so forth, and so forth, and so forth. Got to take a break for commercial. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the last segment of our program today here. And before we take our last phone call, a little bit of news. Hawaii's Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is introducing a bipartisan act to decriminalize marijuana at the national level. This bill, if passed, will remove the drug from the federal controlled substances list, which will end this conflict between the federal government and states that seek to decriminalize it. Of course, big alcohol and big tobacco are going to fight this tooth and nail, because as people start using more and more marijuana, they're dropping tobacco, they're dropping alcohol. Apparently, 40% of beer drinkers said that they would prefer marijuana over beer if it was legalized. So way to go, Tulsi. I remember years ago when I was in college, and I was very much involved in the move to legalize marijuana back then. We weren't very successful. We kept forgetting where we left the signed petitions. All right, we're going to go over and grab a phone call here from Dan in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Yeah, just wondering, I was watching these YouTube videos with my wife lately. They're kind of amusing. They're dash cam videos of car crashes, and about 90% of the ones we watch are from Russia. And one thing I started noticing in the background, there's people walking around shopping, there's bright shiny factories, there's all kinds of trucks with like agriculture logos on the side, and it just seems like it's a bustling nation full of commerce and like a mercantile exchange and you name it. I mean,
it's a happening
not bears
place.
on unicycles.
It's a happening place, and you know, part of that recently is in response to the oil price war and the sanctions, which is forcing Russia to become more self-sufficient internally, which is exactly the opposite of what the New World Order wants. The New World Order wants an entire planet where no one area is able to take care of itself. We're forced to be dependent on the rest of the world to keep us enslaved, to keep us under control. The reason so many of those crash videos are coming out of Russia is because in many parts of Russia it is now mandatory to have a TV recorder on your car to record when you have an accident for insurance purposes and so forth. And so that's why there's so much more of these videos out there. It's not because the Russians are lousy drivers or anything like that. Remember when that big meteor came crashing on down a couple of years ago, and how there was so many of these car videos that caught it? That's because car videos are very commonplace in Russia now.
It seems to me that, you know, Russia, after, you know, the Soviet Union collapsed, just like, you know, Germany collapsed after World War II, they're just an economic powerhouse. There's no stopping them. And I'm thinking that's why Victoria Nuland and trying to take out Russia and make sure Russia didn't join Ukraine or align with them instead of the EU.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, this clash of civilizations is really a war between banking systems, and that's all it's ever been. Dan, we're going to have to let you go here. There's the music. It's time for me to get on out of here. I got to go find a locksmith to fix the locks on the Honda, sweep it for bugs, and all the rest of that stuff. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, with the lovely Lady Claire here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, please make a point of sharing what you learn here with everybody that you know. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.